There are lots of sources of help with the formal recruitment process, but there are decisions and choices that you as the employer will make.
The first thing I have to do, of course, if I'm employing for myself, is I have to find people, which means I have to advertise for them, interview them, decide whether or not they're going to be the right people for the job, and then I have to engage them with a proper contract.
Know yourself, exactly what you want. Know what you want and get somebody else in your life, family member, partner, friend, anything. Get them in and sit down and work out a care plan list for yourself. Work out your daily schedule. So have that for somebody. Have that like a job description, because each person's job description is different. So have a structure of how your day goes and what you're looking for.
So the first thing I do when I start looking for a PA is revisit my job description and check that it's still relevant and accurate, because if you go through periods of time where you've had someone for 4 or 5 years, they've progressed with you and your condition might have changed. So, you might 5 years ago, you might have been able to feed yourself and now you can't. So I make sure that the job description about what I need someone to be able to do is up to date. And then have a scour of Indeed and have a look at what other people are writing, recruiting PAs, and see what bits I like and what I don't like. And then I draft a advert. Sometimes I might ask an existing member of the team to have a look at it and critique it and tell me what's missing or what's not going to attract somebody.
Think about the hours and work patterns you'll advertise.
I've got like a administrative PA stroke team leader, and we write the rota 3 months ahead if we can, based on what I know is happening.
How and where you advertise will determine who sees your advert and who applies.
Think carefully about what information you want to give out and where you want to give it out.
I kind of talked a little about myself, that I had SMA, a bit of background information, and then I kind of just talked about what my week would look like, and that's where I brought in kind of my hobbies and stuff like that. And then at the end, I rounded off by talking about someone, like what I would want from someone and what their personality should kind of be like.
How your advert makes people feel about the job can encourage them to apply.
The employer I ended up working with, when I read about them, I suppose I was also personally interested in their life and the experience they'd had, and I could see myself working with that person, which is a nice thing to have at work and makes you feel confident applying for stuff as well. Like I remember thinking, oh, like I sound like I might be the right person for this, which I think when you're applying for jobs coming out of uni, you spend a lot of your time thinking, I don't think I'm really the person that they're looking for, or oh, I don't really have the experience for this.
Make the advert attractive, I guess. You can make sure the basics are there, but try and convey that this is different to working in the care home or working for a care agency. Try and capture that independent living aspect, because I think some people don't realise what this sort of role entails. Because I think I've had people tell me that my advert really just grabbed them.
I'd applied for stuff with agencies that I sort of knew already that I didn't really feel I wasn't maybe massively happy about the way they conducted their work and didn't really want to work in that setting. So I think coming across an advert for something where I could get the experience of working with people and not having to have some of the more negative aspects that some similar jobs have was really appealing.
Being clear about your lifestyle and what the role involves can also prevent wasting time with applicants who are not right for you and the job.
It's also really important that you describe the type of job and the type of person you are. So, for example, my diet is not, I'm not a vegetarian. Now, I'm not saying that I wouldn't employ a vegetarian, but I wouldn't employ someone that's unwilling to cook meat because I choose to eat meat. And that's not discrimination. It's the fact that I can't do it myself. And if they're unwilling to do it, then it isn't the job for them and they're not the right person for me.
Make sure that your advert meets the requirements of the platform you're advertising on, that it doesn't give any information you're uncomfortable sharing, and that it is legal.
Need to comply with the laws on advertising and selection for candidates to avoid unwitting breaches of equality law. So need to be clear in adverts what the tasks will be, what the selection process will be. Never put your address in, obviously, or too many personal details into the advert, but make it clear that it will be a role for which certain exemptions exist in equality law, that because it will involve working with a person one-to-one or as part of a small team usually.
There are many ways to find the right person.
Yeah, be prepared to think outside the box a little bit with advertising. Word of mouth has always been my best way of recruiting people. A lot of my PAs have come through friends of PAs or friends and family, and also getting it out on social media. That's a new, fairly, recent thing for me, because when I started, that really didn't exist. So, you have to be prepared to change with the new ways of doing things.
It's okay to employ someone who's already on your radar, who's worked for friends, because this isn't a giant corporation. It's someone coming to provide support in your everyday life. If they're already on the periphery of your everyday life, then that can be a huge bonus.
Sometimes there'll be different ways to structure the tasks you need. Unless it disadvantages you, try to create roles and working patterns that will appeal to potential PAs.
One of the ways that I structure my team is to make sure that I negotiate the correct length for calls in order to make sense of the work that they're doing. So I will make sure that I can provide them with sufficient work to make a sensible length of call time that I can get funding for from the council. Now, that's actually quite challenging to negotiate, but it's really important, because if you have a small team, I have a team of 6, and some of them are just really bank staff. So I have 4 key main workers, really. And I need to make sure that I can give them sufficient hours to make us a reasonably sensible job, even though I can't give them kind of full-time work, as it were. And that really depends on your lifestyle and what you need.
I was looking for a job anywhere. I'd look for, you look for places where you can progress and where people are going to be interested in teaching you a bit more and interested in you.
There's nothing wrong with choosing the best people for you based on their qualities, skills, and attributes. But making unjustified generalizations about who you want to employ could be illegal discrimination.
Equality rights are not absolute. They are rights to be treated fairly and respected in every aspect of employment, from advertisement of a role or the decision not to advertise it, right through to the end of an employment relationship, and often beyond, how people are treated after they stop being your employee. But we discriminate every day because discrimination is just choice. We make choices. We say we like things, we don't like things. We choose what to eat. We choose where to go. We choose who our friends are. And people can be incredibly discriminatory about who their personal friends are. It's built into humanity that we do have preferences and comfort zones for different things. The law doesn't stop that. What it stops is unreasonable restrictions on people without an objective justification. So if you need, in order to feel comfortable and safe in your own home and to feel at home with the people working for you, if you need them to be the same biological sex as you, or indeed a different biological sex from you, because of the nature of the tasks they'll be doing, or because that's who you want in your home when you may otherwise be alone, that's fine. It has an objective justification.
We're recruiting somebody, so we have to consider all the legislation that, you know, a Tesco's or a Barclays Bank considers. But there's an element, even with Tesco's and Barclays Bank, around culture fit. So I think, you know, we can't say, oh, somebody's not white, so I'm not going to employ them. We can't say, oh, their sexual orientation isn't heterosexual, so I'm not going to employ them. However, if I was recruiting somebody, I happen to work for a bank, and if during an interview they said, you know, I don't like corporate companies, I hate banks, you know, I don't believe in what they stand for, then realistically, they might be supporting me at work. Do they present a risk to my own personal brand?
Be clear in advance. Explain your culture, explain your workplace. Treat it in the same way that you would expect to be treated if you were going to a job interview anywhere else. But be human, be real, because that's what makes really good PA workplace relationships, is the humanity, the honesty on both sides of the relationship.
What usually comes at the core of everything is just whether you have chemistry with that person. And if you do sort of gel with that person and you build up a rapport, I find any other cultural differences or any other kind of differences in sort of living, actually you end up working through them.
Do the same as you would do if you were the employer of 10,000 people. Map out for yourself on paper or computer or even in your head, what are my ethics, my values, my workplace culture? What is a no-go for me?
Defining the person you're looking for is called a person specification. It will include attributes, soft skills, and formal qualifications.
I wanted someone that would fit in with everyone else and kind of not stand out too much.
Some people prefer to have PAs who come from a care background already, but others choose to teach people who are new to the field about their own specific needs.
When you've got somebody who's never done care before, not only have you got to teach them all the bits about care, you've then got to say, and by the way, that's how I like it done, not how the video that the CQC, or whatever they call it, C8, the personal health budget, make you watch a video on moving and handling, which is very, you know, straight down the line. Not, well, actually, in reality, not everybody's got all of that equipment and all that space, and not always will we be at my home and in that setup.
She didn't really have like many qualifications or anything, but she ended up being the perfect match for me. She was really young, enthusiastic, adventurous.
Hopefully, your advert will have attracted a variety of potential PAs. The next stage is to decide who is suitable to interview and which ones obviously do not meet your criteria. You can narrow it down gradually.
you've got to just look at the applications that come in and make an honest appraisal of them and go, which ones do I want to carry forward? You have to decide whether or not when you, I always phone people up first and just have a conversation with them on the phone to make sure that I'm comfortable that they're serious about applying for the job, that they do have the qualifications that I need. And when I say qualifications, I don't want qualifications, but I do need someone who can drive, for instance, and I need people who can work certain hours.
A FaceTime call with them first, and then arrange to meet them, usually somewhere that isn't my home, for a coffee or a Coca-Cola or something similar, where you just get a little vibe of them to see what they're like around somebody in a wheelchair initially. And then what I say to them is, why don't you just come and shadow part of a shift?
The next thing you need to think about as a prospective PA user is whether you want to use your home as the place to interview, because you may or may not be happy to do that. I am happy to do that, partly because I've done quite a lot of thinking, sifting, checking, etc. But if you're not, then you need to have somewhere else to interview people.
When you talk to them, find out what it might be like to have them as your PA. This is both on a practical level and on a personal level.
I just asked them to kind of talk me through like the very practical things, like have they done hoisting before? Have they done, transfers? Have they, the mechanics of care? I sort of, I'm curious at first just to understand whether, like the core requisite sort of skills are there as needed. I also early on tried to get an understanding of like whether they are actually going to be physically able to sort of to move me. Like I'm quite I'm quite big. I'm quite big. Basically, like it needs someone relatively like about 5'6" and weigh about 70 kilograms. So like it does require someone physically quite strong, even just to turn me. Even little things like that strength is required.
The advantage of doing it this way is that I have choice of who supports me. So I find it the number one thing is that I can gel with them because I get that vibe usually just from general conversation, and then I go through things that are on the application form. So we discuss previous experience, and that's not always essential, but you can build a better picture if they talk about their previous work experience, and also how they view things. I have in my application form, there's a section about why they're applying, and I find that's it gives me a good indication of how they might approach care.
And such a job where personal connection and that relationship is so important. You structure the conversation to try and understand that person and whether you and that individual are able to form that rapport, and whether you think this is someone you can trust, and whether you think this is somebody who can feel comfortable being in like your home in like the most intimate way.
I think the first thing is reliability, good timekeeping, and somebody that's honest. I think if you get those three, you're doing okay. I think I like somebody who actually cares. I mean, they're not going to care about me at the start, but I think they have to learn to think. I like them to think, I want to do this for Kim because I want her to have the best life possible.
And then I say, what do you think? Is there anything you've got any concerns? And there's a risk at that point that they go, this isn't for me. And I go, okay, fair enough.
There'll be times when you're disappointed in someone who seemed good, but then turns out not to be who you thought, or who doesn't follow through with the interview process.
I just like moved on with it. It was their problem that they didn't show up. It's nothing to do with you. You shouldn't put that on yourself. Because because a lot of people are looking for different jobs at the same time. That something might creep up, they might get a job, they might get the job first somewhere else. So yeah, just don't put it on yourself if that happens.
If you sort of hire PAs and you get to know different people, you do begin to pick up on certain signals that can indicate whether someone will be respectful of confidentiality and trust, on top of all the usual legal means around like contracts and whatnot.
When you've started to build rapport with a candidate who you like and who seems right for the role, it's important to double check what they're telling you about themselves. You can do this via a DBS check to make sure they have no criminal background, and through references from past employers or people who know them who are trustworthy, like professional people.
It is a job which is quite intimate. There is nothing in my life that is private from my PAs, because I can't even lock a drawer without help. So I can't keep anything locked. And my phone, they all know the code to my phone. It's not possible to have a private area of your life when you are a significant PA user. And you just need to bear that in mind. And in any event, you need to be able to trust your PAs, which is really important anyway, because you need them to work with you effectively.
When you hire somebody who you have no direct connection with or connection to previously, there is just more work that then needs to be done to kind of background check and reference check and whatnot.
Because I work in a regulated industry and the people that support me at work, the laws of like ID verification, and even though the people that support me have no access to customers' data or systems, they might hear me talking about things, so they have to sign a confidentiality agreement. So if they're unwilling to do that, I can't hire them. And the employer that I work for asks them to go through their own referencing and vetting process. So they look at their financial history, because anyone who's got poor finances that's within a building that's to do with finances is a risk. So again, they have a risk appetite which is quite low. So I have to talk about those kind of things.
At the start, I didn't even know you had to get references. This is how unqualified I was at this. But after People Plus, obviously they had my back. They told me that I needed to get 2 references. So I sent out the email, and obviously for one of my PAs, they didn't have like any caring jobs before, so it was quite it was like screw fix and like B&Q and stuff like that. But the references that did come through were absolutely amazing. I was actually like quite stunned by it, because they had answered the questions so well, and like these signs, like she would come in for like extra hours if you needed her to do something else. She would do it. She would make time for it. I was like, this was music to my ears. I was like, oh wow. So I think you can actually get quite a lot from the references.
No employer has a duty to hire a person who isn't a good fit for the job. So if you've been clear in advance about your workplace expectations, your values, your culture, and people come along who might be able to muddle through, well, you could give them a trial. You could do it, or you can just say no.
It's a very personal job. It's a very private space that you're inviting people into. You have to feel comfortable. So I trust my gut in this instance. And if my gut is saying, I'm not entirely sure about this, then I don't. But it's taken me a while to get there. And I've tried on numerous occasions to persuade my gut that it's perfectly okay. And then I'm wrong.
The minute that you've selected a candidate and sent out the nice, polite, brief communications to the others saying, sorry, but you didn't get the job, and any feedback that you want to give them, although you don't have to give them feedback on why they didn't get the job. The minute you've done that, you need to start working on an employment contract. Now, there are great templates for those.
As an employer, I'm legally obliged to provide a contract of employment. It can be fairly simple. In my case, I have a set contract that my insurance company provides me with, and I just complete that. But I used to draw up my own terms and conditions.
You must give them written terms and conditions of employment by the time they start. So they need to know by day one of their employment in writing the basics of what the expectations will be, where they might be expected to work, whether they might have to sleep in from time to time, what they're going to be paid, how many days of holiday they'll get, and it must of course be at least the legal minimum of 28 days, including bank holidays and public holidays, whether there's overtime pay, what their maximum working week will be, and if you want them to opt out of the 48-hour working week maximum, you need to get them to do that freely, voluntarily, fully informed, and in writing before they start work to avoid problems.
The contracts I have had were from a local PA support group. I used a standard template from them in order to create the document. What I liked about this document they shared is that it wasn't very human language, like it wasn't full of complex legal-esque.
When you've attracted good candidates with an appealing job and an interesting advert, you've interviewed the people who meet your criteria, and you've received good references on the person you choose, and you've given them a contract confirming they'll work for you, it's finally time to welcome them to your team and introduce them to the role.
When I train people, I start them off with the easier shifts so that they can get the basics, that I can go to the toilet, have food, get ready for bed, get up, dress, that sort of thing. All my PAs could drive, but that's something I introduce them to gradually. More complicated bits of equipment, like my wheelchair, that sort of comes a bit later on. But I do like everybody to be able to do everything because of having to cover when people are away.
You run through like how you like devices being used, how to not use them, like how to use them sort of safely and not break things. Take you through sort of your car and making sure everything is sort of, done in the right way and insured accordingly.
Let them know a little bit about you, find out about them. You might have at the interview, but see about them. And I think just remember that you might know your house, you might know you might know your condition, but they don't. So talk them through it. Either if you've got a team of people, then they can maybe do it for you. But if not, just talk them through it.
The training I give very much depends on sort of firstly like what they've done before. If they have done hoisting, if they've done personal care before, they usually have an idea of what to expect, and sort of your training involves just sort of maybe your specific preferences and how you like things done. But then I have had people before who have never really done hoisting, who have never done much personal care before, and so your training is much more involved. So it's either done by whoever was the previous PA or like family.
I also ask my carers to maybe, if they've got time, even they can do it in the time they're here, look up my condition.
There are lots of sources of information and template documents for all the stages of recruitment.
always check all your insurance policies, because at least one of them is likely to provide support for onboarding employees. Always look at the small print in them.
The formalities you'll need when advertising and hiring are a job description and a person specification, an advert, DBS checks and references, and a contract. You need to think about what information about yourself you're comfortable sharing, your workplace culture, the justifiable characteristics of the person you want to employ, the experience or qualifications you require, how you'll conduct interviews, and how you will introduce your new PA to the job.